Oh, hi there, boys and girls. Welcome back to Journey Through the Bible with Adventure Andrew. Today we're going to look for the very first signpost on this journey. This first signpost is found in what we see in the book of Genesis, the first book of the Bible, Genesis chapter 1 all the way through to Genesis chapter 11. Do you know the name of the first signpost? The first signpost that we're looking for is called Paradise and Pollution. Paradise and Pollution. I need your help to find this first signpost. Can you see it anywhere? Where? Over there? Oh, there it is. Thank you. Thank you. I've been looking for this one. Here it is. Signpost number 1, Paradise and Pollution. Now, this is how we summarize the first 11 chapters of the Bible, Genesis chapter 1 and verse 11. You know, a great way to learn about what this first signpost teaches us is to remember 4 great events. It's not too hard to remember these 4 great events. Let me tell you what they are. The first great event is called the creation. The second is the curse. The third is called the flood, and the fourth is called the tower. Let me explain what this first signpost teaches us about these 4 events. The first one is called the creation. We learn about the creation in Genesis chapter 1 and 2. We read, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." And then we read in the rest of Genesis chapter 1, in 6 days, God created the world. He did this by the power of His word. He didn't need anything to make it. He just spoke and it was. And you know what God said after He created everything? He said, "It is good." But then on the 6th day, He created the most important part of His creation, and that was the very first man. His name was Adam. The Bible tells us that God created man in His image. And that means human beings are valuable and precious to God. He also made from Adam, from his side, a lady, the very first woman, and that was his wife, and her name is Eve. So in Genesis chapter 1, we learn about the first great event, the creation, and that is the creation of heaven and earth and also of the very first human beings. But then we learn about the second event, and that is called the curse. And that's found in Genesis chapter 3, 4 and 5. What happens in Genesis 3, 4 and 5? Well, we learnt that God had made Adam and Eve and placed them in a beautiful garden. God said that they were to enjoy everything that there was in the garden, but there was one tree that they were not allowed to eat the fruit of, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The day they eat the fruit, said God, they will surely die. But in Genesis chapter 3, we learn something really sad. Adam and Eve disobeyed God. God made Adam and Eve holy and happy, but now they're going to become sad and sinful. There is a tempter in the garden. It was a snake. Now later on in our journey through the Bible, we learn that that snake is the devil. Now this snake tempted Eve, and Eve sadly listened. And she gave the fruit to her husband that was with her, and he ate it. And the moment they ate that fruit, they disobeyed God, and God punished Adam and Eve. God gave a punishment to the snake, He gave a punishment to Eve, and He gave a punishment to Adam. And because Adam and Eve sinned, you know what happened? There is now terrible things are going to happen in this world. There's going to be disasters. There's going to be diseases. There's going to be death. Why do those things happen, boys and girls? Because the second part of this first signpost called the curse tells us because Adam and Eve sinned, sin came into the world and sin brings misery. That's why terrible things happen in this world. It's because of sin. But then there was a third event that we need to remember with this first signpost. The third one is this. It's called the flood. And this takes place in Genesis chapter 6 through to 9. In Genesis chapter 6 and verse 5, we learn that when God looked down at the world, he saw that evil filled people's hearts continually. People were violent and they were eating and drinking and didn't think about God. They only thought about themselves. They lived for their own happiness. So God said that he is going to judge the world. And how is he going to do it? He was going to send a flood. Rain would come down. Rain would come out of the ground as well, and it would flood everything, and every living creature will die. But there was one man that pleased God. Do you know his name? Noah. Noah pleased God, and God was going to save Noah. But he was also going to save his wife, their 3 sons, and their wives. That's 8 people all up. And God gave Noah some instructions. The instructions were that he wants him to build a really big boat. We call this an ark. And his family would be saved inside of that while God judged the world. Noah obeyed God, and as Noah and his family went in the ark with the animals that God brought there, God closed the door and the family was safe from the storm. And for nearly a year, they were inside that big boat. And afterwards, they came out and they were able to have a new life. But that brings us to the fourth event, and that is called the tower. We learn about this in Genesis chapter 11. In Genesis chapter 11, the people were all in one place. God actually wanted the people to spread out across the world and spread his glory. But they weren't doing that. They were in one place and they built this really, really big tower. And this big tower was their way of boasting and bragging, trying to make people think that they were really, really great. They weren't loving God the way they should. They were loving themselves. So what did God do? God came down to their tower, which they thought was huge, but it wasn't. And God changed their languages. Back then, everybody spoke the same language. But God changed their languages, and that forced the people to spread out to different parts in the world. So boys and girls, this first signpost in the journey through the Bible, found in Genesis chapter 1 to 11, is called paradise and pollution. Paradise because that's how beautiful it was when God first created the world, but because of sin, it became polluted. So if you're going to remember this first signpost, you need to remember the 4 events that I shared with you. Are you ready to say them all? The creation, the curse, the flood, and the tower. Boys and girls, thank you for joining Adventure Andrew on this journey through the Bible. This is only the first signpost. We have another 8. So please join me next time.